As the host of Neutralize the Mama Trauma podcast, I am delighted to be able to bring you this podcast. My name is Wendy Lopez, and I would like to introduce myself to you. I specialize in helping people overcome their emotional blocks through different techniques, through emotional empowerment coaching and compassionate healing life facilitation. As a mom who has experienced narcissistic trauma, I help moms eradicate self-doubt in order to regain self-confidence to elevate their status both at home and at work. In our podcast, we discuss people's struggles, triumphs, and failures. We dive deeper into self-love, self-compassion, self-acceptance, and mindful, holistic tips. In every episode, I hope that you can take a golden nugget of advice and apply it to the journey of motherhood in order to raise your level of awareness. Welcome to the Neutralize the Mama Trauma podcast, where you find healing and creative mental thought advice from experts on past pain, narcissistic experiences, and trauma. Today, we have a special guest. Her name is Emily Bass. She's a mindset expert and transformation coach who helps people uncover the stories and emotions holding them back so they can live a life they love. Emily struggled with mental, physical, and emotional issues for years until eventually finding the root and transforming her life. She began her journey focusing on the physical, believing her issues were rooting from a health challenge or gut dysbiosis, which is an imbalanced gut. Eventually, she discovered that the cause was her anxiety, depression, physical and emotional health challenges stemmed from repressed mental, physical, and sexual trauma from a covert narcissist parent starting in childhood. Now, Emily guides others to heal and unpack the subconscious stories and emotions that are holding them back from authentic expression and living a life they love. So, welcome, Emily. That is a pretty big, extensive background on your life as far as trauma and dealing with narcissistic parents. And before we get started, I just want to let the audience know that Emily's here to give us more the perspective of coming from a child perspective and how she was able to overcome. And now she has her own successful business. And she can give us tips on moms coming from the perspective of a child, how we can better ourselves in helping our own children going through narcissistic experiences. And if you don't have children, you can use this to help yourself with your own personal relationships. So, Emily, I'm going to go ahead and have you share with us your story and how you got here.
Yeah, so happy to be here. Thank you, Wendy. So yeah, my story started, it started with looking at a lot of the physical issues that were going on. So I had, I was always bloated, IBS, PCOS, and then I was really anxious and really depressed. And I couldn't really quite figure out what was going on because objectively my life seemed, it seemed great. Like I was doing my master's. I had like a healthy relationship. My relationship with my parents from my perspective at that point seemed good. It seemed normal. And yeah, so I started going down these paths and seeking out, specialists starting with my gut. And then, it'd be successful in that way, but then I'd still be noticing that my anxiety and my depression and, being suicidal, that was, not really helping. Like it wasn't getting better. And yeah, so a series of different events happened, and I ended up with a coach that my dad had actually recommended me to go to for my mom, because he was suggesting that my mom, was a narcissist and, had all of these things and caused us a lot of trauma. And yeah, so he found this coach who specialized in personality disorders, and recommended that I go to it. I went to her and realized actually in the first session that it was my dad who had, caused me a lot of trauma that had been repressed. and it kind of exploded from there. And yeah, then I went down a really interesting healing journey, and it was, mainly all alternative methods of healing. So a lot of the energetic practices, a lot of the, a lot of energy healing that actually really, really transformed how I went through healing from this. But yeah, there's a lot that we could get into with the specific modalities that I used. But then, yeah, it leads me up to now. So that was around 3 years of doing extensive healing, I would say. And, kind of wondering, when is this ever going to end? And yeah, it definitely gets better if you are in a place where you are in any sort of that like healing journey, which I still am. But, the questions at the beginning was, is this ever going to get better? The codependency, the trauma bonding, all of those different things. And yeah, so now I'm able to hold space for other people and to help them at whatever stage they're on too.
Right. So at what age did you realize that that there was this imbalance with the behavior of your parents that was causing you, that was inflicting, repressed, because we have to repress, right? When we're little, we can't tell our parents like, oh, you're wrong, or the way you're treating me. Sometimes we don't feel at liberty to discuss with them how we really feel. So at what age were you when you started noticing these, what we call toxic behaviors from parents?
So I didn't notice that until I went to the coaching session. So
So it's like a normal.
Yeah, like I thought,
Oh.
from my perspective, the relationship that I had with my father was like we were friends, like up until this point. And he was in a his ex had left him at this point, and he had kind of latched on to me. So he was calling me for about 3 or 4 hours each day, telling me like, he had written a book that he was Joseph from the Bible. He was going on all of these really interesting like tangents and loopholes, but no, like I didn't think any of this was weird even at that point. It was only until I went to the coach and kind of went back, and she was getting me to do these exercises where you went back and like, if there was a moment in time where you felt that was still lingering within your consciousness. And I was like, oh yeah, I remember this. And then I remember this. And then it kind of like blew up. And it wasn't until I actually went to that coaching session that I realized that my dad had some mental health issues or,
So when you were going to your coach and you were going back, what was the earliest age that you went back?
So the first memory that I went back to, and the one that she was like, this is a little interesting, was, I was being thrown downstairs. And so she got me to go back to that and be as a little girl. So I was probably about maybe 11 at this time.
Okay.
And so she got me to go back to that moment and, say what I wanted to say. And at that moment, I just froze. Like I didn't say anything. And in the session, I was just standing there with my arms over my chest, just shaking. And, she was like, Emily, like say what you would have said, or, like you can reenact it in any sort of way. Like you can do anything. And I just froze for the entire like session. And then after that, she was like, and it's interesting because she was working with my dad at the time too. So she had, yeah. Wow. And so I think she pieced it together because he had sent her the book, and, he had played the victim in like exaggerated ways. So I think she pieced it together pretty quickly and ended that relationship, with my dad pretty quickly. But yeah, that was how I found out.
Wow. So she was able to pick up that he was the cause.
Yeah.
And he was sending you to therapy.
Yeah.
Because what did he feel that you needed therapy or coaching with? What did he see in his, NPD mind?
So he said that it was my mom who had caused me the trauma. So he was really into, my dad was very, very intellectually smart. So he would look at all of these different philosophies and go back. And so it was the Greek mythology that he was referring my mom to as Kali. So Kali, the destructor, and Kali's the, evil one who has caused you all of these different things. And he was basically blaming, all of my issues on my mom. And so in the session, she was saying, okay, go back to a time in your mom when your mom, did something. And I said, I can't really think of, my mom doing anything, but I can think of my dad. And so she's like, okay, well, let's start with that. And then that was how it happened. So it actually started with my dad recommending me to go to this lady because of he had blamed it on my mom. And
wow. What a discovery, right?
Yeah.
And so when you realize, because at this time, like we said, it was like your normal. So you didn't really know there was really anything wrong per se. And when you discovered that it was actually your dad having this trauma affecting you because of his NPD, how did you feel?
It was honestly awful. It felt as if my reality had completely shattered because I had I perceived it as such an amazingly close relationship. Like I would have said that my dad was my best friend before. So when these things started coming up for me, all of these memories that had been suppressed, so much fear, all of these emotions, I honestly broke down. So I had to take around 2 to 3 months off of my school. I was so paranoid. I was extremely fearful. I kind of my identity kind of crumbled, and I kind of lost touch of who I actually was. I was, really confused. I would say for probably around 4 to 5 months, the predominant feeling was overwhelmed and really confused, because there was a huge chunk of me wanting to go back to how it was before, and that relationship, and kind of forget all of the truth of the memories that were coming up and the emotions, and also the repercussions of this coming up. So I ended the relationship with my dad. I just kind of cut that off, just to set a boundary for me to heal and process this. But it was so difficult. So much of me just wanted to, the trauma bond was so strong. I just wanted to protect his image. I didn't want to make him feel, sad in any way, or but it was so difficult. It was an extremely, extremely difficult thing to process. And then alongside with the feeling, the empathetic feeling and the codependency and the trauma bond of not wanting to hurt this person, and sort of my sense of self so interconnected with him, that it was heartbreaking. It was so heartbreaking. So I was feeling everything at that time.
Yes. And I asked that question just for the fact that my personal experience, and this is what I do with what I do, is I thought, in my experience, I thought I was the one with the issues. And when I started receiving help, I realized that my husband had a lot of these narcissistic personality disorder. And so I delved into I'm going to fix myself. I'm going to fix myself. I'm going to fix myself.
Yeah.
Right. And then thinking that fixing myself, it was going to fix the relationship. But I wasn't really aware of this narcissism. I wasn't aware about that this existed. I come from a Latin culture, so I thought it was more macho, but it was beyond macho.
Right.
It was, the narcissism that was just really caving me in, where it was the devaluation of myself. And you mentioned, and I had touch of suicidal ideation myself. So, and you mentioned it. How old were you when you had some of that?
Yeah, so that would be quite frequent when I would feel that I was losing control. And so that would show up in my relationships. So say I would have a conflict in my like relationships, so like my intimate relationships. And so if I would feel like I was losing control, I would freak out. So I would cut myself to sort of just numb some of that. And
Mm.
just to get the emotional pain, I think, into the physical. I think that that's the intention of what I was doing in those moments, but I just felt like I just wanted to leave. And then for sure, when my dad so when his ex-girlfriend left, this is when he went very delusional. So yeah, as I said, he thought he was Joseph from the Bible and was calling me. At this point, he was also
Mm.
telling me to come have sex with him. So at that point, when that was happening, I got suicidal, as in like I was just wanting. I remember this moment, just laying in bed. So I lay in bed and just bawl,
Mhm.
like just scream, cry. And then I just remember just wanting to go jump off the balcony. Like I just couldn't, it was so
Oh.
painful in my reality that I just didn't have the tools and I didn't have the capacity to even know what was going on, but know how to like get myself out of that state. And so, yeah, that was like frequent. It was interesting too that you bring that up, because I was talking to someone that I hadn't talked to in a while in the summer who had
Mhm.
known me from high school. And she was saying that I was like that in high school too. Like, so she was dating my brother at the time and was saying that
Mhm.
I had said that I wanted to go and kill myself, but I don't remember that at all. So that was
Oh.
really interesting. So there's so much like repression and things that keep coming up for me that I'd even blocked out then. But I think that this was a pattern. And I just remember when it would be triggered when I feel out of control, like when something would happen that I'm like,
Mm.
ah, and then I didn't have the capacity or the capabilities to deal with it.
Right. And that's what I want to share as well. Like you mentioned, and it's a good share that when someone feels to that extreme of wanting to take those actions, which is not recommendable, but it's the fact that we don't have the tools, we don't have the help, and we don't have the knowledge,
Yeah.
right, to get ourselves out of that thinking. And I think at that time it's really a moment of despair,
Yeah.
of not being able to see beyond, that's something extreme. And
Mhm.
how old were you when he was asking this of you?
To like to have sex.
Hmm.
Oh, so this was frequently going on in my house, like not sex, but like touching and grabbing and getting
Hmm.
things. So that was throughout my childhood, which up until that point I thought was normal. Like I didn't think anything was weird about that.
Oh.
Because he had normalized it so much to say. So he would say that like society has it all wrong. Our family has it all figured out. Like we have it right. And then he would have like different philosophies, and like he loved Carl Jung, and he would be able to rationalize why he was doing that, so that you would think that it was normal, it was proper. So he was doing this up until I was 22. So the month before I even found out, he was telling me to come have sex with him, but he would say that we couldn't, that so I needed to imagine it, because I couldn't actually go and do it because society would demonize it, and that the reason why I'm having all of these emotional and anxiety and depression and all of these different issues is because I wanted to. So in that I was repressing it, and that was my shadow. So he was basically saying that like my shadow self
Mm.
like wanted to.
Wow. So I'm sorry to interrupt, but he listened to all these teachers, and he pulled out what would benefit him, and he would brainwash you in a way where it was to his benefit, taking like the teachings of these other teachers that are not teaching that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Holy goodness.
Yeah. And so it was interesting too, because he would read all of these different philosophies. So he was super intellectually smart. He was also a teacher too. So he had done his master's on like the science and religion. And so would read all of these different philosophies and all these different teachings. And he would do this throughout my entire childhood. Like that's what we'd be reading and that's what we'd be discussing and stuff. But then he would use bits of those to, support whatever he selfishly kind of wanted or,
Mm-hmm.
had sort of created in his mind that this was the good way, the right way, whatever
Mm-hmm.
story he felt like telling himself to, get what he,
Mm.
yeah.
Wow. And that's amazing. And so, being that I had that experience, that awakening from how my husband actually was, and you had an awakening of how your father was, that's like two foundations that gets rocked.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
How did you overcome that for yourself?
Hmm. Yeah. So it was really interesting because at the time when I found out, it was as I said, just so overwhelming, and it felt like my
Hmm.
whole reality had shattered, and I didn't know who I was, and I didn't know how I was going to be able to rebuild myself. But at
Hmm.
the same time, there was a part of me that was relieved because I felt like I had finally gotten to the root of what was actually going on. Because previous to that, I was just, something's not right. Like something's not right. And as you said, like you blame it on yourself. Like, what is wrong with me? What is wrong with me? And so a part of me, a slice of me was like,
Hmm.
I found out what's wrong. And now I can, at least I have awareness of what I need to do to,
Hmm.
rebuild, almost like rebuild myself or like even remember who I am essentially.
Hmm.
Um, so I'd say there's those two dynamics, and that was just a
Hmm.
sliver, but it was enough of a sliver that I was like, yes,
Yes.
okay, let's go.
Ah.
So let's start. And then, so basically it was starting, and I started with CPTSD. So I started with really
Mhm.
honing in on my emotional triggers. Um, and then I guess there was just like, I tried about maybe like 16 different methodologies throughout my whole like journey, which was
Mm.
like, and then a new thing would come up and I'd say, okay, what tools or what resources do I need to, have to, manage this thing or overcome this thing? And then it'd just be kind of like,
Mm.
okay, this, and then they all kind of compiled on
Mm.
it on another. And then too, like sometimes you'd like go to another thing. So for example, healing for empaths or highly sensitive
Mhm.
people. That was one of the things.
Mhm.
And then you jump to like mindset, and then you jump to like, reprogram the unconscious, but then you'd also jump back to, you know, uh, the empaths or highly sensitive thing. So it was
Mhm.
like this dynamic thing that like whatever was coming up for me in the present moment, I
Mm.
would just kind of figure out a new methodology or
Mhm.
a new worldview or
Mhm.
a new philosophy to overcome that. So yeah, it was honestly just starting. And then when I started, just you would find new things that would support you in the new things that were coming up for you. And then once that, you would jump to another thing that would support you with whatever is coming up. So it was honestly just starting. And also I think it's important to like have the faith that,
Mhm.
it's working out. Like it's all in perfect timing, and that, you can't
Mhm.
rush it, but it's happening, and it's going to happen in divine timing and divine order. So I think the faith thing was also really huge too, that,
Mm.
I am
That's
healing, going well.
yes. Yes, that's beautiful. And all of that, I took that same route where I tried all different, types, and that actually recreated my foundation,
Yeah, no, 100%.
right? So, a lot of us kids um, and even moms that are married base their foundation from a partner or a husband or solely from the parents.
Yeah.
but we're really here to build a foundation for ourselves, right? On the mental, emotional, spiritual, mind, body, and spirit, right? So that way we can help ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the beauty of an example of you, uh, a living example of, wow, being under your own parents and then normalizing this dysfunctional uh, mentality and bringing that dysfunctional mentality as a parent and created all this trauma and abuse. But the beauty is that you were able to make something of it where now you help people. So can you tell us, like, what do you do?
Yeah. So I do a few different things, and I find it hard because it's like all integrated, right? So my
Hmm.
name's Integrated M, but it's so in terms of the more of the trauma based approach that I have. So yeah, I'd be helping people unpack like the unconscious or things that like challenging the beliefs of what was normal firstly, and finding the root. So the main thing is finding the root of what's actually causing the symptoms, not actually treating the
Hmm.
symptoms, but like what's underneath this, like what's actually
Hmm.
the root of this, which usually comes down to some sort of assumption or belief or perspective, opinion that had happened in later years or at some moment of time.
Hmm.
And then sort of going back and either neutralizing that or creating a different story from that event. um,
Hmm.
so yeah, that's kind of the methodology. And then I use all of the different approaches that I have came across in my toolbox to help each person, because each person sort of like thinks about it, so like it's a subjective um perspective that they have on these different things. So, some
Hmm.
people are more into the scientific approach and,
Hmm.
understanding, but then some people are more spiritual. So kind of seeing where each person resonates with, and then, designing something that's going to be able to support them and help them in the most effective
Right.
way.
Right, beautiful. So, with your experience, what would you say is one of the biggest lessons, two or three lessons that you've learned from this whole experience growing up as a child with such a toxic, I don't even have words for what you went through.
Yeah. Yeah. I would say, firstly, it's that, the personality that you have, that you think that you are, the person that you think that you are,
Mhm.
can be constantly challenged and can be constantly evolved and like
Mhm.
molded into whatever and whoever you most resonate with. So
Yes.
the things that have happened in the past have created the current personality. However, if we go back and we shift those and or we look at them in a different perspective, um, you can completely have a different, opinion about yourself, about the world, and that this is completely like malleable and like like you can mold it into whatever is actually going to best serve you. So yeah, that's like one of the biggest
Mm.
things that I learned, that the things that have happened in the past aren't actually you, but if you don't
Mhm.
actually look at them with like raw honesty,
Mhm.
don't like sugarcoat it, don't try to be protecting anyone, but just look at it. You can see the beliefs or the assumptions that you've made, but now you can choose different ones for how you want to live now and into the future. So that is one of like the biggest things, and that I love helping like my clients with, or helping
Mhm.
anyone with, is
Mhm.
it's all completely like changeable in a
Yes.
way, with a different
And that
perspective.
makes sense because I had an awareness of that this year, how our personality is really created from um, who are you with most of
Yeah,
the time? Your
yeah.
parents, right? But then
Mhm.
when you uncover and you release all these subconscious beliefs, you actually uncover your real personality,
Yeah, yeah.
right? And that's such a great um, experience to really learn from. What's another one that you would say?
So I would say another one is really like tuning in with, you know, your emotional body, and really like finding methodologies to start circulating this energy that you have, you know, access to, um, throughout your body. So you're not in these like survival modes. And so you can do this from like a mindset perspective, right? Of looking back and, you know, changing those subconscious beliefs. But another way that I found even arguably more effective was actually
Mhm.
doing the embodied work of, you know, waking up your energy centers, starting to get that energy flowing from this survival state into this creative and like expansive state, and, you know, using
Mhm.
your body as a way to facilitate the remembering of like who you actually are. And then having something as a daily practice, so literally anything that you resonate with as something daily that you can do, and it doesn't have to be like an hour, it doesn't have to be
Mhm.
whatever. It can just be like 5 minutes, 10 minutes of something that's going to start like, you know, putting you back into your body and making you a little bit more present in,
Mhm.
you know, who you actually are, so that when things come up in your day, you can be responding in a way that's like aligned and
Mm.
authentic and grounded, rather
Mhm.
than reactive. So that is
Mm.
another huge one that I
I
learned.
love it. Yes, yes, beautiful. And before we close, what would you suggest or give a tip for moms that they can use that is practical and they can probably use it, once a day or throughout the week that can help them because wherever they're at right now, that can help them get another either perspective, shine a light on something by doing some type of practice.
Mhm. So in terms of like what you can do with your children, if you are in a,
Hmm.
you know, relationship, or if you're in an environment where there is someone
Hmm.
that you would characterize as a narcissist or in some sort of way
Hmm.
unhealthy, like my biggest suggestion would be really tuning in and holding space for the child to be able to have a healthy way to express whatever they're feeling in the moment, and also being able to, you know, even talk with them at some points, you know, if the partner is coming off in a way that is, you know, unhealthy, just holding space and explaining to the child, it's not your fault. Like, you don't need to listen to this, or,
Mm.
you know, explaining to them so that they're not internalizing this, because, yeah, from the age of 0 to 7, you're basically pure subconscious mind, just internalizing and, you know, taking on all of these different energies and, you know, belief systems. So I think explaining to the child and being able to hold space for the child, so beneficial, especially when their brain's developing. And that would be, you know, one of the recommendations in terms of that. And then in terms of like you holding space for yourself, really just taking like, you know, 10 minutes, as I said before, 5 to 10 minutes to really be able to tune in and, you know, decide each day like what is aligned, what is authentic to you. And it could just be like journaling. So journaling is a really practical tool. Like,
Mhm.
who am I deciding to be today? Like, what will I no longer accept? And then just, you know, writing whatever comes up for you without filtering it, without like thinking anyone's going to read the journal, or, you know,
Mhm.
tear the pages up if you want to, if that makes you feel safe, but really having
Safer,
an
yeah.
outlet to express that and really like not suppress what's going on, and just have something that you can, you know,
Mhm.
get it out of your head, get it out of your energy onto
Mhm.
something physical. So journaling, meditation, visualization, going up and running, literally jumping around and shaking. That's like one of my favorite tools right now, is just shaking, like
Mhm.
moving.
Mhm.
So yeah, just something where you can start to release some of that repressed or suppressed emotion. Don't hold on to it. Don't hold on to it.
Yes, that's a great one. I really like that for the fact that when you're living in that environment, I'm sure, I mean, I've lived it where it's constant every day, right? So
Yeah.
every day, that would be a good practice. Like, it's kind of like bullshit in, bullshit out. Just,
Yeah.
right? Because it's not helping
Absolutely.
you as a mother and it's not helping the child.
No, 100%.
And yeah, yeah, yeah. And so I've done that with my own child as letting him know, like, hey, this is this is not right behavior, or what was said
Mhm.
is not right. This would be more appropriate. Um, because again, that whole devaluation of a person is what the narcissist really wants.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's where we come from, the space of we're not good enough, we don't have that value, or we're not smart enough. You tie everything and it's like it's not enough,
Yeah. No,
right?
100%. Yeah.
Yes, right. And so this is the full circle that I want to show moms and the children, that there is enoughness in all of us.
No, 100%.
Right. And then, like, this is why I have the podcast, is you guys are examples of, not just me. I really believe as a collective coming together and shining that light, for not just us, but for the children as well. So I really appreciate you, Emily, coming in and sharing your story, being real and raw. And I really suggest, people that are going through this to really seek out, coaching, healthy therapy, holistic therapy, whatever resonates. But the point is that, we're in a time where there's so much information and technology that I really feel there is no excuse,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? But the whole point is for you to be strengthened enough to reach your hand out to receive help to lead you to a healthier life for you and your children.
And like the thing too with that is that sometimes you can be in a space where you don't know like where help is, but once you start, there's so much help available to you, and that there's like so much support like waiting to actually help you and to lift you up. So
I
it's
love that.
definitely available. Yeah.
I love that. And you said before, like it was a slither was enough for you,
Yeah.
for it to just start. You started receiving support or knowing of people, or even with your own work that you were doing. And then you started doing it for yourself, and then it became a profession. So just that slither is enough, right?
Yeah.
So thank you so much. Yes, I really appreciate you.
Yeah.
So I will put your links down, and anybody that resonates with you, that wants to get in touch with you, will have all your information where they can meet you at in your platforms.
Perfect. And have the best day.
Thank you so much. Thank you for taking the time to listen to Neutralize the Mama Trauma podcast. If you haven't already, please hit the like and subscribe button so you don't miss any new episodes. It would also mean the world to me if you're able to take a moment and rate and review my podcast on how it was helpful to you. Also, please connect with me on my social media platforms. Thank you so much, and I hope to see you in the next episode.